St. Augustine's church had seen hundreds of funerals over the years. Rich, poor, loved, forgotten, death made everyone equal, or so people believed. But on a rainy April afternoon, a quiet funeral with only a handful of guests would unravel secrets buried for decades. Secrets about love, about war, about a life no one truly understood, until it was too late. And the person who finally spoke up? He wasn't even on the guest list. But what he revealed changed everything. Margaret Allen had been married to William Allen for 47 years. To the world, William was a quiet man, a retired postman, kept to himself, went to church, tipped the paper boy. When he passed, there was no grand farewell. No family flew in. Just a small obituary and a Tuesday time slot at the church nobody really noticed. Margaret stood alone in the front pew, hands trembling, eyes hollow, dressed in black. And instead of comfort, she received public humiliation. The priest, Father Everett, stepped up to the pulpit, his voice cold and measured. William Allen was a quiet man, perhaps too quiet. A man is known by his works. And to be honest, I did not see much of William in this church. Nor do I see many friends or family here today. Whispers rippled through the room. Margaret lowered her head, tears brimming. We bury a man today who left behind little legacy of faith or community involvement, Father Everett continued. And I say this not to condemn, but to reflect. Margaret stood. She turned, ready to walk away. She couldn't bear it. Then a voice rang from the back. "Excuse me, Father, but you're wrong." A man in a long coat, with silver hair and military posture, stepped forward. He walked slowly down the aisle. No one recognized him. His presence was commanding. When he reached the pulpit, he spoke with authority. "My name is Colonel Daniel Bishop, retired. William Allen saved my life, and the lives of 14 others." Gasped. The room froze. He continued, "In 1972, in Laos, we were captured, imprisoned, tortured. Then one night, a man entered the camp. No weapon, just a stolen uniform, a knife in his boot, and a stare that knew death. That man was William Allen." Father Everett fumbled. There's no record of him serving. No medals." Colonel Bishop turned. "That's because his missions were black ops, erased from records, but not from memory." Margaret whispered, "He told me he fixed radios in Thailand." Colonel Bishop smiled softly. "He did. Between rescuing POWs and destroying enemy supply lines." He looked at the sparse crowd. He didn't want medals. He just wanted peace. He delivered 15 men home, and disappeared back into quiet life. What followed was hours of testimony from veterans who had never forgotten. Soldiers, nurses, field officers. One by one, they came forward. Margaret sat frozen. The man she thought she knew had been a legend. But it didn't end there. In the days that followed, the small town buzzed with disbelief. The local newspaper ran the story. Soon, national media picked it up. Margaret's mailbox overflowed with letters from men who remembered William Allen's courage, some from sons of the men he saved. A reporter arrived at Margaret's door asking for an interview. She declined. She wasn't ready to share him with the world, not yet. But she opened William's old chest. Inside, she found handwritten letters he never sent, some with tears on the ink. Letters to her. Letters to men he rescued. Confessions of pain, of guilt, of nightmares. One line stood out in shaky handwriting. I chose silence because the noise was too heavy to carry. Margaret cried that night, not just for the man she lost, but for the man she never truly knew and loved anyway. She shared the letters with Colonel Bishop. He read them aloud at a veterans event. From that night forward, William Allen became a symbol, not of patriotism, but of personal sacrifice, of humility. A memorial bench appeared in the town square with a brass plaque. William Allen, the quiet hero. He spoke through actions. Schoolchildren learned about him. Documentaries called. And yet, Margaret kept one letter for herself. To my dearest Margaret, it read, "The war took pieces of me. You were the only piece that made me feel whole again. Thank you for being my peace. Love, William." Years later, Margaret would sit on that bench, telling children about the man with a mailbag and a hidden past. And always, she would finish with a smile. He never wanted applause. But I'll clap for him every day. Because sometimes the loudest lives are lived in silence. And sometimes heroes are buried in small-town cemeteries, until one voice reminds the world to listen. But the final twist came weeks later, at the reading of William's will. The lawyer's office was packed with unfamiliar faces. Men in uniform, journalists, a few town officials. Margaret sat in the front, clutching her handbag. She expected the usual: the house, the savings, maybe a donation to the local veterans center. Instead, the lawyer pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed and thick. This was written by William 2 years before his passing, the lawyer began. It was to be read only upon his death. He unfolded the letter and began. If you're hearing this, it means my time has come. I have lived quietly, but not without purpose. If I am remembered at all, let it not be for war, but for love. Then the lawyer paused. To my beloved Margaret, I leave you the truth. The room shifted. In the hidden compartment beneath the floorboards in our bedroom, you'll find the records, names, operations, and full journals of what I never dared tell you. I didn't hide these out of shame, but to protect you. Margaret gasped. To the Department of Defense, I leave copies of these journals. Perhaps one day they will understand the price of silence. To the town of Hadley, I leave my pension and remaining funds to build a shelter for veterans. Not with my name, but with the words, Here peace begins." The room was stunned. Margaret looked up, her face trembling. This wasn't just a will. It was William's final mission. And in that moment, every humiliation she'd endured, the dismissive words, the empty pews, the whispered doubts, turned to ash. Her husband had left her not just a legacy, but a purpose. The man who was mocked in death had lifted others in life. And now the world would finally know it.